And in guiding us, then we provide comments and coaching to the schools. The report, the data points, enrollment, one of the questions is in terms of why do we tell you what our enrollment is? Well, you're not telling us because all of us could look it up. What we're asking you to do is to say, is your grade level, are your students consistently the same students, or do you have a lot of mobility? Does the number remain the same? And what you have is variation in who's in the seat as opposed to the fact that there's volatility in the numbers. Well, what we're finding across the schools is there's not much volatility in the numbers going up and down, but we have the schools telling us they have a lot of different students coming and going. So if 5 students leave, they will tend to get 4 students back. Okay. Now, that would be in the analysis, and we don't see it in the analysis. Okay. So it makes it look like, to the casual observer, that they're very stable in population. As you take a look at one of the reasons we asked for at the beginning of the year for the number of students with disabilities is because what we're asking them to do is to tell us about, do you have variation and challenge? So if you have a very high percentage of special needs students, then one would think in the analysis, it would be how are you addressing your special needs population? The entry-level skills, where we asked for how many students entered 2 or more grade levels behind, 3 or more grade levels behind. The intent in asking for that is for the district to look at that to begin to say, do we have a feeder pattern problem? Because the solution would not then be at the school. The solution to their problem would be in the feeder schools. And we're wanting that kind of conversation to be taking place between the district and the school. And hence, in the principal's report, we asked the question, has there been a meeting between the school's leadership team and the district's leadership team? Okay, and as you read these, the reason I say we have not arrived yet is you don't see those kinds of discussions occurring either in the minutes of the meetings or in the reports that they submit. The teacher attendance, I know, has caused some angst with people. But in truth, the question that's really being asked there is, why are teachers absent? And we want them delving into, is it because we're not providing support? Is it because the teacher doesn't feel connected to us? Is it because the teacher has no sense of urgency? And then what do we do? It isn't necessarily that there's high absenteeism. It is really about, what are you going to do about it? And as opposed to being helpless and reporting helplessness. The student attendance, again, students quite often tell their level of engagement with their feet, especially as you move towards high school. And that said, elementary is a different concern. Elementaries are really about, did the parent help the child get there? So who would be your target audience is different at secondary than it is at elementary. Those are the kinds of discussions we're hoping to continue to generate. Now, the principle where we ask for barriers, what we continue to see to some degree is poverty is a barrier, the parents' lack of interest is a barrier. In truth, we're wanting to move them beyond that discussion to real barriers. What keeps you from being able to get 1 year growth in 1 year's time? What keeps you from getting 1.5 years growth in 1 year's time? We're beginning to see that. We're beginning to see it in the conversations. We're moving conversations from being the concern about students not coming to school to, we need a social worker to be making contact with the children and helping them solve problems so that they're able to come to school. Okay. It's taken us a good 3/4 to get to that level. And we actually set up an advisory group of school improvement specialists from the field to give us feedback. Initially, the reports were not well received because it was different than the way we had thought under the first 3 years, where I got to set my own goals. Okay, where I could put, I'm going to do 500 walkthroughs in the next 3 months. So we moved away from that concept to actually saying, tell us what the grades are. What are the grades your students are getting? We link that with the unit assessment. The concept of the unit assessment is, how well did your students do in the last 3 weeks on what you just taught them? The positive there is we're getting schools now beginning to say, should I test just the standards in my unit, or should I test the foundation skills I also taught? That's a significant improvement over what we got at the beginning of the year, because people are beginning to think in terms of what I just taught and what I had to do in my differentiation. The initial resistance to the format really is dissipating, and those schools and those districts that are really beyond the blaming of the classification. You still see in a few of the reports blaming of the classification. Our problems are all because you called us a priority school. We're seeing that really going away, and only a few people still clinging to the fact that it's really not about the label. And in truth, to some degree, as a state, we've misused the label. Priority meant priority. Make the school a priority and do something there that is innovative, as you heard this morning, innovative, and evaluate it. Evaluate the efforts you're making and keep data on the intervention and the innovation and whether or not it works. So that said, for the most part, in our initial page, we indicated to the board that we're also doing the academic distress schools reviews currently, and that not today, but somewhere down the road, we would like you to consider for the schools entering the 3rd year of academic distress, that the districts in the fall should come forth and indicate what their plan is if we're staying with a 5-year statute that says you can only be in academic distress for 5 years. Then those that are entering year 3 probably should have a tighter plan than those that are in the 1st year. The other thing we would recommend, not today, not for action today, but for down the road, would be that we probably would want to take a look at the priority schools that have also remained as priority status and begin to view them as pre-academic distress, and maybe do the same review and request the same process in the fall for those schools. That concludes my comments. Okay. So if there are questions.
Any questions for Dr. Weil? Is it?
Not a question. So, I mean, I'm one of those that's concerned about teacher absence. To miss more than 5 days in a 45-day period is consistently is questionable. And then when you look and see there's almost an exact correlation between the kids making D's and F's at the grade level and the teacher absenteeism. So I'm pleased to hear you saying that you want to get down into what's going on. But I was looking, because Pine Bluff will be up shortly, at Bel Air Elementary, when 90%, I mean, made D and F on a pre and post test. I mean,
and in truth, part of that, again, going back to, if all I'm doing is testing the standard on my unit exam, then, and my students have come in without necessarily the level of skill at the level I'm teaching. So if I don't differentiate, There's a whole lot of analysis that goes with that one piece of data that would suggest there's a lot of failure in terms of the analysis.
Right. But I guess my point is, of course, I'm all about mastery. I'm all about some of the things they're doing in Warren. I'm all about you can learn anything that's next to what you already know, but if you started to teach me, if you're trying to teach sixth grade, but you've got kids who are functioning what we typically think of as third or fourth grade, then you're teaching a subject, but you're not teaching a kid.
Correct.
And to try to get us to the point where we task analyze, find out what the kids already know, teach them what's next in line, and progress from there. I guess in my mind, I was hoping that RTI, obviously I'm a little dyslexic today, that RTI was going to help us with some of those things. The TLI part of my brain is, I'm not sure, I know a lot of districts are using that, but I'm not sure that that is a good use of their money. I think there are others that might give a better idea, and I know we can't dictate that from the state level. That has to be a local decision, but it doesn't seem like it gives the teachers a good idea of what's going to happen on the benchmark, the park, and now the Aspire. Can you give me some feedback?
Well, the interim assessments in Aspire have a different purpose than the interim assessments with TLI. And if I'm using TLI as my pacing guide, and then what I'm doing is an end of quarter summative exam, they're doing the same thing that our unit tests are intended to do, which is, are the kids learning what we're teaching them? The formative assessments in terms of Aspire are really the same test, the same pool of questions, but all aimed at the end of the year. So what you would be looking for is an upward trend or progression as you go through the school year. And for the most part, with our academic distress schools, we're saying to them, limit your testing, and probably Aspire interims would be a better concept for you to engage in right now, because what you're wanting to do is to be able to tell if your teaching will be improving how the students perform at the end of the year. Now, it doesn't give you the guidance on what to do because it's the end of the year. Okay, that's the drawback of Aspire's interims. And if what you're doing are some probing questions or some taking small questions from the standards that you're doing, if you take the classroom assessments within Aspire that are standards-based and you pair it up with your foundation or the differentiation of what you just taught, then you would have a better unit exam than what they've currently been doing. So we have some thoughts about how to guide schools with the assessment.
Yeah, and I'm even wondering, of course, Hope Allen and the people who are experts in the area, but I know that they tell us the reason we can't get the test back, the Aspire or Park or whoever, back quickly is because of the writing part of that. So I'm going, in the day of computers and analysis and all that, why can't we get the math, language, arts part back and then do the writing later? Or why don't we quit testing the writing if that's slowing everything down? Because the student is the one who's being penalized because the teacher doesn't know and they can't do any reteaching, so the kid goes all summer and then loses 1% of what he already has. So, I don't expect you to solve all my frustrations, but these are the kind of things as a teacher or a principal that I would, I'm hearing what you're saying. Let's dig down and find out, is he missing school because I'm teaching him an 8th grade concept and he's only on 4th grade level, because if I were constantly having to go into a situation where I was a failure and people were talking above my head, my attendance rate would go down significantly. So I'm pleased that that's what you all are working with them on, is okay, we've got the numbers here, let's find out why we've got the
Now
numbers.
let's start the deeper analysis.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Dr. Wild. Well, Dr. Wild, if you want to stay up for the next one.
I'm back already.
Membership and school improvement, school improvement and academic distress reporting. In 2014, Ms. Gullett had set the committee for academic distress, and Ms. Savers is the chair. She'll be cycling off, and I'll be leaving also. And I've asked Ms. Zook and Mr. Williamson are still on the committee, and I've asked Ms. Zook to serve as chair, asked Ms. Dean to join, and also hoping that we'll include, or recommending that we include, the Arkansas Teacher of the Year next time. I think I was talking to Ms. Newton about it, and we agreed that it would give a different perspective and a different lens, and get to look at it from, the teacher's perspective, as well as the data that we have. So
The other piece that we would like to do in July is to set a schedule for not just the progress reports. And one difference in how we intend to do progress reports next year, this is May, and we're just now reporting out on the third quarter. Okay. Well, the next step in our plan is to be moving them to more real time.
okay.
So that every 2 weeks, they're filling in their data at their leadership team meetings rather than waiting until the end of the quarter and trying to run reports. The schools must develop a more real-time system for their information to gather the data. Going along with that, if the subcommittee is going to have schools come, we'd like to set a schedule so that we could do reviews ahead of time. We would also, if the board is going to set a schedule for monthly, like Little Rock or others to come monthly, then we would just like to schedule out the whole year. And we have, in the information that was provided, we provided some slides and some examples of how we'd like to do that.
All right. I think that's a good idea, but I won't be here. So, Ms. Zook, I see Mr. Williamson nodding and Ms. Dean nodding, so I think that would be helpful. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Now we're back to the Learning Services Report. Is Stacy Smith here?
I've texted her if she would be returning, and I haven't received a response, so I don't know if she was mixed up on the lunchtime or not, but.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay. Well, Ms. Kaufman?
Ms. Smith just submitted her report, and she felt like her comments that she provided before the lunch would be sufficient.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. Then we'll move to the Nominating Committee report. Ms.
Zook.
That's what
That's all right. That's all right. In the absence of Ms. Savers, who's still ill, we had a meeting with her on the phone yesterday, Mr. Black, Ms. Savers and I, and before the meeting had been held, each of the state board members had been polled to find out who was willing to serve as chair and vice chair and who was not, and we took those into consideration, and we would like to submit Ms. Maria Wright as chair and Dr. J. Barth as vice chair for the coming year.
Okay. So that is Nominating Committee's report, and that will be the slate of officers that we'll present for the next month's board meeting to be voted on. Okay. And I see Mr. Hoy. Something going on? Is anything left for me to do? I saw you, and I thought maybe you need to say something. You're on the agenda. Okay. You're on the next one. Okay. This ends our regular agenda for Friday, and so could I ask? I'm sorry.
Ms. Newton, we have an individual here who would like to make public comment, so if the board would allow 3 minutes for this individual, and I don't have his name.
30 minutes or 3 minutes?
3.
I thought you said 30. I was going to say absolutely
I may
not.
have. If I did that, I misspoke.
Okay, the board okay with that? Okay. Sure. 3 minutes. Would you come and give your name for the record, please?
Madam Chair, respected board members, my name is Ryan Chase Gore. I'm a father, a son, a husband, and an educator. I was raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm a proud product of Little Rock Public School District. I'm a veteran of the Iraq War, in which I received honorable commendations, as well as an honorable discharge. I'm currently a special education teacher in Pine Bluff School District. On May 3rd, 2016, I emailed specific concerns, subject line, Pine Bluff School District Board President to the Arkansas Department of Education, board members. I received responses with instructions on how to properly present our concerns. I'm appreciative of this opportunity that has been afforded to address this committee to present, through questioning, specific and relevant information regarding manipulation, retaliation, illegal and unethical board practices by the Pine Bluff School District board leadership, specifically School Board President Mr. Henry Dabner. The unethical conduct of the school board president is that of willful, flagrant, and often shameless acts. These acts show a moral indifference to the opinions of the respected staff and faculty of the Pine Bluff School District and the community at large. He disregards well-established law that board members may not act as individuals, but only as board in legally called sessions. The actions of ethical conduct simply do not exist for Mr. Dabner. Mr. Dabner often violates the First Amendment rights of teachers that may voice an opinion or concern with the school district by retaliating against them for exercising these rights, clearly an actionable offense. He chooses to willfully ignore that his individual illegal actions detrimentally reflect on the entire board as a whole, as well as the citizens of Pine Bluff whom elected him. Mr. Dabner often discusses school business as well as day-to-day operations of the school with his selected pool of staff and administrators. I have been subjected and have fallen victim to his unethical behavior and his retaliatory acts, which were co-authored by others, which will be confirmed from findings through questioning. In clear violation of state open meetings law, Mr. Dabner frequently invites selected individuals into executive sessions to bring forth information, present information that should be a part of public record. Central Office Administration will attest to Mr. Dabner's clear violation of open meeting law and his role, among other things, changing superintendent's personnel recommendations. Each school board takes an oath or an affirmation when accepting their position, and it is within reasonable understanding that this oath is to confirm that they will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties before them. This oath encourages board members to work cooperatively for the common good, even when differences exist. We are concerned about the integrity of the board under Mr. Dabner's leadership. However, I am confident that the Pine Bluff School District can and will be successful, with all board members sharing responsibility for leadership and policy creation. We have a newly appointed superintendent, Dr. Robinson. While serving as chair of the Superintendent Selection Committee for certified staff, as a committee, we gathered that he was a man of integrity and high standard, with clearly stated goals and expectations for the Pine Bluff education system. He and I, as well as many of our teachers and support staff, share the same position of no nonsense as it deals with education, as well as the rehabilitation of the Pine Bluff education system. With that being said, we must be flexible in the letter of the law, but also firm in the spirit of the law. We are requesting a comprehensive investigation concerning all stated issues that have been brought forth in this complaint, as well as proper training of the school board. Employee rights related to their protection from undue influence and retaliatory practices in the day-to-day operations must be affirmed. The Pine Bluff School District and the families of this community deserve better. Our children deserve better. I do not challenge you. Rather, I encourage you to investigate and ask questions concerning these claims. Take in mind that you can't ask the pool of people they will have ready for you to ask. You must go to the Walmarts and the RJs and the Cothams and speak to these community people. They are ready for you to ask them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your comments. I'd have to defer at this point. Are there any before questions? And what was your name again?
Ryan Chase Gore.
Ryan Chase Gore?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Defer to our counsel as what are the next steps in Mr. Gore's request. Ms. Clay?
I'll be happy to look at all of Mr. Gore's complaints. The department has limited authority in action and overseeing actions of the board when they're not related to some sort of distress. Obviously, when we get into a distress situation, there's authority there to intervene in board actions. But as far as enforcement authority of, say, the Freedom of Information Act on a local school board, that's not you as a board or the department's prerogative to pursue. That would have to be pursued via the court system. And though I never encourage someone to sue a school district, that's the avenue to remedy a Freedom of Information Act violation. I'll be happy to visit with Mr. Gore about these concerns and see what we can do with regard to
Give us some direction. And I did receive a copy, as the others did, of your letter, and I was at a loss as to how to respond. And normally what we do is we'll refer those letters and those questions and concerns to our staff at the Department of Education. So I'll just count on you having a conversation with Ms. Clay. I don't see any point of having discussion about the allegations at this point, because that may hinder your case, and it may put us in a position of being litigants of some action. So by virtue of her willingness to speak to you, I think that would be the first step. And thank you for your courage, thank you for your outspokenness, and thank you for putting yourself here in a position of possible retaliation. But I understand that your frustration has risen to that point, so thank you.
I want to also mention that as soon as we adjourn here, we will be talking with the Pine Bluff District. Sometimes their board members come, sometimes some of their administrators come, and that is an open meeting. You're welcome to stay if you would like to. And maybe we can get to the bottom of some of these things in our questions of them at that time.
Thank you.
Ms. Clay?
I do need to mention one more thing. Ms. Freno reminded me that Mr. Gore does have pending litigation against the department. It's not related to the Pine Bluff School District, but for that reason, I cannot talk to him unless it's through his counsel. But we do have a working relationship with his attorney, and we'll be happy to visit via that mechanism with him.
Yeah. Mr. Gore, you did understand her statement that she's not free to speak with you. So any concern, you could have your counsel refer to our counsel, and we'll move from that point. So again, thank you. So at this point, if there's no further business of the board, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved by Ms. Dean, second? Second. All in favor? Okay. The meeting-
Those of you who are on the Academic Distress Committee, do you want to take a break before we start, or do you, I don't know if the Pine Bluff people are all here. Or
Good
any
to have
of them
somebody.
here.
Sure.
Yeah. Here come some of the Pine Bluff folks. Could you find out what that's about and let us know? Thank you.
So you want us to get back?